Good afternoon, AGS crew, and welcome to this week's video. In addition to the matchup previews that I'll be doing every week, this week I've also put together a draft analysis on each team, so this video will be a little bit longer than usual. I will try to set up timestamps if YouTube lets me do that, so you can skip around to the relevant parts for you. I just want to start by saying thank you again for coming out to the draft. It was awesome to see everyone and meet everyone who I haven't met before, and I think it was a hell of a draft. Our teams are much more even than other leagues that I've been in, and I think the draft itself was a ton of fun, as well as all the analysis that went into it. I'm sure a lot of you guys had spreadsheets going just like I did. It was a lot of fun to figure out the $500 auction budget. Just a couple of reminders before we get into it. Make sure you're staying in touch on Discord throughout the season, and update your notification settings in the app so that we're not getting too much or too little notifications. There's a lot of good chat in there, a lot of good information as well. Second, based on the vote that we took at the draft, I've added the loser penalty into the official rules, which are posted in Discord. We also have two other new rule proposals that I posted in Discord this morning. I want to get your feedback for a few days, and then later this week or this weekend, I'll send out an email with the rule proposals and a survey link for us all to take a vote. I did lay out the pros and cons in Discord based on how I see them. But if anybody else wants to advocate for or against one of the proposals, please do that. I think that would be great. You're welcome to lay out your arguments in Discord, or post a video like this, or send an email to the group, whatever works for you. I definitely welcome that. All right, with that, let's get right into the video. All right, so I entered our league into two platforms for draft grades. The first is the Ultimate Draft Kit on the Fantasy Footballers website, and the second is Fantasy Pros. I also pulled in our week 1 scores according to Sleeper for another data point. Fantasy Pros gave us a dynasty score as well as how they expect we'll do in week 1. So I have 4 different data points here for us to see how we did in the draft. And congrats to Dalton for winning the draft according to Fantasy Pros. They have you ranked number 1 with a score of 100, which is awesome. And as you can see by the scores and the letter grades, it's pretty crazy how evenly matched this league is. So I think we did a great job of all putting in the effort in the draft prep, and it really shows here. The lowest letter grade is just a B-, which is surprising. Usually you see some C's and D's at least, maybe an occasional F. And then the highest is only an A-, so it's going to be neck and neck all season. I have a ton more detail on this that I'm going to walk through next, but I want to keep it really short for the sake of the video, under 30 seconds a piece. But I will post the full detail of everything on Discord so you can take your time and walk through your own team if you like after. So let's get into it. Dalton, you're up first. Overall, you got a B from the Ultimate Draft Kit, which I think undervalues the dynasty aspect a little bit. Fantasy Pros has you ranked number 1, though, with a score of 100, which is awesome. You have a very well-balanced starting lineup with plenty of depth on your roster and your bench. And yeah, you're going to have a great season. Getting into a more detailed breakdown from the Ultimate Draft Kit. Again, they're undervaluing the dynasty aspect here. You have a very well-balanced roster with plenty of upside as well as depth. Just great job all around, Dalton. Next up is Jeff with his infamous Who Wants a Coffee steal of a lifetime. I hope you paid Taro well for that. You definitely owe him something. The Ultimate Draft Kit gave you a score of B+, and Fantasy Pros gave you a rank of 2 and a score of 98. That's awesome. And you have a ton of depth at wide receiver and running back. I think that you didn't spend enough on your starters, though. It had a little bit too much money left over for your bench, but let's see what the detail says. Well, the Ultimate Draft Kit somewhat agrees. Your running backs are just outrageously good from getting Aaron Jones for basically free. I think it was $4. That's crazy. You could be better at quarterback and wide receiver, and you're probably going to struggle in bye weeks without having a good quarterback backup. So you might want to look into a trade there. Jason, I want none of that, Chubb, please. UDK has you ranked worst with a B-. Congrats. And Fantasy Pros puts you at number 3. So who knows? They do focus a little more on the dynasty aspect, though, on Fantasy Pros. So I think you're going to have a good long run here, just maybe struggle in year 1. So we'll see what happens. You have a fantastic starting lineup, just not a ton of depth. Jumping into the detail, outside of your top tier players, your team is pretty weak this year. Plenty of long-term plays though, so from a dynasty perspective, I think you're in a great spot. but you have to expect to suck big on your bye weeks this year. You just don't have the depth for it. Taro. What in the hell is this team name? Is it Wrong Direction but with an Asian accent? Or am I just being racist? I've been trying to figure this one out for a couple of months now. You got a B from the Ultimate Draft Kit, a score 96, and ranked number 4 by Fantasy Pros. That's awesome. I don't even know how that's possible with literally no running backs on your team, so congrats there. You must have just killed it on everything else. And the detailed view confirms it. Absolutely no starting or depth at the running back position. They even have you struggling at wide receiver, although I think that's more harsh than it should be. The real hope here is that your quarterbacks will carry you, and you can fill up the rest with trades and future rookie drafts. And just a quick call out the Red Stars because you didn't have a kick up in your lineup at all, even on the bench when I pulled this together. I assume you're going to pick up somebody, maybe Mason Crosby. That's my favorite kicker that's still available, so do with that what you will. Todd, nice team name and also a great band. B plus from the Ultimate Draft Kit, 96 and rank 5 from Fantasy Pros. Fantasy Pros likes your starters, but they say that you don't have as much depth as you'd like to have on your bench. I don't know. I think it's a good team. And the Ultimate Draft Kit kind of says the opposite here compared to Fantasy Pros, with plenty of strength on your bench and just okay on your starters. Again, I think they overvalue the current year and aren't factoring in Dynasty as much as Fantasy Pros does. But I think your team is just full of upside with a really high ceiling on your starters. I think Joe Burrow is going to be fantastic in particular. And, maybe your average weekly fantasy points isn't going to blow us out of the water, but I think you just have a ton of upside. Scott, you have the number 1 bench. Congrats. Although the Ultimate Draft Kit gives you an A-, Fantasy Pros says you have the worst set of starters in the league. I don't know that I'd be that harsh, but this is kind of what we all expected based on how you were drafting. You just saved way too much money for your bench, didn't splurge on a couple of big players like you probably should with an auction draft. And this view confirms it. A's across the board on your bench and flex spots, exactly what we knew would happen. But low ratings on your running back and wide receiver. Although Mike Evans is going to do great for you this year. Chase Edmonds has a lot of upside too. I think your team isn't that bad. But your quarterbacks, man, that's bad. Trey Lance, Tom Brady. Tom Brady will do okay this year, but he's a one-hit wonder for you. Brad, you got a B plus from the Ultimate Draft Kit, 93 and rank 7 from Fantasy Pros. It's a pretty well-balanced team from a starter bench perspective, according to Fantasy Pros, and I would agree with that. However, the Ultimate Draft Kit is absolutely thrashing your team's bench. It's definitely not valuing Dynasty correctly here. I don't think this deserves Fs across the board. Overall, I'd say this is probably one of the best teams in the league this year. We'll have to see how things go in future years for you, but I really like this roster. Nice job, man. Steve, you managed a B plus from the Ultimate Draft Kit, which is great, but only an 87 in ranking from Fantasy Pros. It's interesting, Ultimate Draft Kit and Fantasy Pros are actually way different in grading your team, which we'll see in just a second. So Fantasy Pros gave you a number 10 in your starting roster, but the only place that I think is going to hurt you is running back. Not having a lot of great top-end players there. That said, you do have great depth on your bench for running back, so I think you'll be fine. Derek Carr is going to be an absolute animal this year. Very, very jealous you got him, and you also locked up Devontae Adams along with that. I like your team a lot. This is awesome. All right, my team is up next. I got an A- from the Ultimate Draft Kit and an 87 and a rank 9 from Fantasy Pros, so I think we all knew this was going to happen. I definitely overspent on my top 3, all of which were on my do not draft list because they're kind of old and overpriced. But they were going for such a steal compared to how I value them in my analysis, so I just had to snatch them up. Couldn't help myself. I think my team's going to be strong this year and then just struggle when they all retire on me in the offseason. I'm going to be looking to trade up at my quarterback position. I have room to lose some depth at running back, but already pretty thin at wide receiver depending on how things play out this year. I also have way too many kickers if anybody's interested in one of those. Matt, you got a B- from the Ultimate Draft Kit, 87 from Fantasy Pros, which is ranked 10. You're really strong at some running back and quarterback starters, but I think you're going to struggle with depth, and you're going to have to hope that there's no injuries this year or you're going to be screwed. You have Mahomes, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, which are all fantastic, but we have an 11-player starting roster, not 3. I think, though, you'll end up holding your own. There aren't any terrible teams in this league by any means, but you're just going to live and die by Jonathan Taylor's ability to get in the end zone. So I see you struggling here and there if he gets injured or is on a bye. Nick, the Ultimate Draft Kit graded your team as a B, and you got an 81 according to Fantasy Pros, which is ranked number 11. Not awesome. You're obviously going to crush it at quarterback this year with Josh Allen, and probably struggle a bit pretty much everywhere else. Your running back and wide receiver bench strength is a little bit rough, so you're going to have to be a hawk with the waiver wire this year, especially when bye weeks come up and you have to start somebody else. Josh Allen, McCaffrey, Waller, those are awesome picks. Great job. You also got a great kicker and a defense, but you're going to struggle a bit with running back and wide receiver, both with who's starting and having some depth there. So, like I said before, definitely pay attention to the waiver wire, get some more players there, maybe make some trades. Last but not least, we have Josh. You got a B+ from the Ultimate Draft Kit, and you got an 81 from Fantasy Pros, which is ranked number 12. Again, they're more of a Dynasty League focus, so they're looking at longevity. But this is definitely going to be a good team this year. Getting over to the detail, I think Jalen Hurts is a stud. Barkley does surprisingly well, as usual, for being on such a sucky team. Giants suck. Geno Smith is a big wild card on your starting roster, using him as your super flex. I hope he does well for you, but that could be a big bust. And like Nick, I think you're going to have to keep a close eye on waivers and use them to navigate through your bye weeks because you just don't have the bench strength this year. And that's it for the draft grades. I will post all this in Discord so you guys can look at it in more detail if you'd like. Now, we are going to switch gears, talk about week 1. We're finally here. First game of the season tonight, and I am pumped. I hope you guys are too. Let's get into the matchups this week. I'm going to do this part of the video every single week, so let me know if you would like to see more of something, less of something, whatever, and let's get into it. First matchup, Mike versus Scott, neighbor versus neighbor, going at it week 1. My team, although weak at quarterback, my running back core is fantastic this year, is going to come out swinging. Hopefully they don't all retire on me too soon. Cooper Kupp is going to do what Cooper Kupp does, beating his projection week 1 and continuing to do that all season long. Hunter Renfrow is going to do even better this year than last year, now that he has Devontae Adams in there to confuse the defenses and struggle covering both of them. And although it's not big points, I am very excited about my kicker and defense this year. I always try to draft high there. Unfortunately, this week their matchups are kind of tough, and I don't expect much out of them. Scott, you put all your draft dollars into your bench. I think you're going to struggle at quarterback and running back positions all year long. Trey Lance is going to be a big letdown. Brady will give you okay fantasy points this week as usual, but not really a breakout star in fantasy. And then, Evans does have potential to be a breakout player for you and beat projections this week, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I'm going to go with myself on this matchup, and I see my running backs and Cooper Kupp are going to pull through and just dominate Scott's lineup. Sorry, Scott. Up next, Jeff versus Josh. Jeff, poor quarterbacks who both underperformed versus expectations. Sorry, buddy. Strong starting running backs, but you have tough matchups against Vegas and Minnesota. Decent wide receivers, but not always as consistent as you'd like them to be. And then just very strong on your flex slots. Josh, you have Jalen Hurts, fantastic pick, but buddy, Geno Smith, that's a big wild card up in Seattle. Who knows what's going to happen there? Could be okay, but might be a huge bust for you. You have great consistency at running back with Barkley and Fournette, but I don't think that they're going to have as high of a ceiling as some other picks that you could have had. Kittle is going to perform very well versus Chicago, so I think he's going to beat projections there. And all in all, I think Jeff's going to be let down by his quarterbacks. Eckler and Jones are going to miss their projections slightly. And I have this one going to Josh by just a small margin. I think he's going to make up that gap in the projections that Sleeper has right now. Taro versus Todd. Taro keeping his kicker a mystery right until the last moment. Doesn't even have one on the roster, but I'd bet he goes for Mason Crosby. We'll see what he does. Herbert, I think he's going to have a solid game, but not a breakout performance. You're completely weak at the running back position. We all knew that from the draft. You really got to make a trade there to make something happen. You are decent on wide receivers and flex, and I think DJ Metcalf's going to have a decent game, outperform projections. Todd, Burrow is going to absolutely light it up against the Steelers. You're rooting for a shootout in that game. I think he's going to do really well. Najee Harris also going to outperform his already high projection for week 1. I think he's an absolute star. Good pick. CeeDee Lamb, he's also going to have a great game. Overall, I see this one going to Todd. Sorry, Taro. I think all of your players are going to outscore Taro's lineup at each and every position by just a tiny bit. So a half point, 1 point at each line. And overall, that's going to add up to a win. Matt versus Nick. Matt, Jonathan Taylor's going to be a beast again this year. Dalvin Cook is a fantastic RB2 for you. Looking at your quarterback, Patrick Mahomes lost Tyreek Hill, and he gained Juju Smith. I think he's still going to do well this year, but I don't see this team being nearly as good, and I think he's going to miss projections, closer to 20 points, not 25. Woods is going to beat projections for you this week. Jacoby Brissett's going to struggle to even put up 10 points. I think you really got to get rid of him, find somebody else, even put in like a backup running back there instead of Brissett, if it was me, but we'll see how he does. Nick, I love Josh Allen. He's going to be an animal for you this year and consistently put up over 30 points, including this week. He's going to easily beat projections. Waller, also going to beat projections. I think he's going to get in the end zone at least once and get quite a bit of yardage, now that he has Devontae Adams there to help spread out the defense. Tyreek Hill in Miami, I do not see that going well. They've done nothing with Devontae Parker in the past, and this is going to be kind of like OBJ did in Cleveland. I just don't think he's going to be that good, even though he was an absolute star on Kansas City. Matt does have some inconsistent players on his roster, but despite that, I think the big guns are going to get it done for him. Jonathan Taylor carries his team to a victory over Nick. Jason versus Dalton. Dalton putting it all on the line and risking his career. He stood his ground at the draft despite Jason trying to intimidate him. What's going to happen in week 1? We shall see. Jason, very well-rounded starting roster. It's going to be consistent for you all season, but I think it has kind of a low ceiling at most of your positions. So I think you're going to be steady Eddie and, not have a lot of breakout weeks and be a top scorer. I expect Jefferson to underperform in week 1 against Green Bay. Chubb and Stafford are going to have great games and beat projections by just a couple of points each. And then your tight end, Andrews, is going to put up points in the first half. It's going to look like he is, outpacing everybody else. But they're against the Jets, and I think in the second half they're just going to run the ball, and you're overall not going to get a ton out of Andrews. Dalton, DeAndre Swift is going to have a good game against Philly, but ETN isn't going to live up to the hype. I think it's kind of like N'Keal Harry did. Great draft pick, but he's going to be a flop. Unfortunately, Kyle Pitts, Antonio Gibson are the highlights on your roster. Both are going to outperform projections. I think those are great picks, and I'm excited to see what Drake London can do against New Orleans this week. I expect he's going to light it up and be a great pick for you as well. I'm going to give this one to Dalton. I think both teams struggle and come in a little bit under projections, but Dalton wins it, and hopefully Jason doesn't treat him any differently at work. Last matchup, Brad versus Steve, our oldest league members going head-to-head in this Week 1 Senior Bowl. Might have to be a new tradition. We'll see how it goes. Brad, Lamar Jackson is not going to meet projections for you this year after he only plays 3 quarters against the Jets. I just think that they're going to win handily and pull their starters in the fourth quarter. Kamara, Jamar Chase, Kelsey, they're all going to meet their projections, but they're not going to blow them out of the water. Pittman's going to have a great game, beating his projection. And then Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to struggle to put up points against Minnesota, and they're going to rely on the run game, particularly in the end zone. So I think the Green Bay passing game is just not going to be much of a factor there. Steve, Derek Carr has a career season this year, I think. He's going to blow his projection out of the water with 30-plus points this week. I think he's consistently going to be up there. You've backed him up with Devontae Adams. I was hoping to get that pair in the draft, but you were willing to put up the auction dollars to make it happen. I wasted all my money on Cooper Kupp. This is my favorite combo in all of football right now, so nice job. I think Adams goes for 25 points or more in week 1 and just has an awesome season with Derek Carr in the Raiders. Stephon Diggs is also going to have an amazing game against the Rams, beat his projections. And then Matt Ryan, he just isn't what he used to be. I don't think he's going to be great. And so I think you're going to see that underperform a little bit. Overall, Jackson's going to be a bust this week, stepping aside to let Derek Carr and Devontae Adams carry Steve to victory. This one's going to Steve and what ends up being our closest matchup of the week. All right, so here's a summary of the picks that I made. I think it's kind of fun to track how often I'm right and wrong, so we'll see how that goes throughout the season. But just to recap, I have myself beating Scott, I have Josh beating Jeff, I have Todd beating Taro, Matt over Nick, Dalton over Jason, good luck Dalton, and Steve beating Brad. And that's going to do it for the week 1 video. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and yeah, happy football. Good luck to everybody.